going to start by creating an index.html file. And I'm also going to create a style.css file. The style.css file is going to contain all of the CSS for the project, which is going to contain all of the styles, all of the design for it. I'm going to be doing the JavaScript inline in the index.html file. So in the index.html file, I'm going to create an HTML tag, and everything is going to go in between these two tags. And just a heads up, this is a beginner tutorial, but it's also going to assume that you have basic understanding of JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. It's going to assume that you know how to write the code, but it's not going to assume that you know how to do, an extravagant amount of it. So here we go. So in the head, we put things like links to style sheets, links to Bootstrap, which we're going to use in this tutorial, along with jQuery, which we're not going to write any jQuery code. We're just going to use jQuery because it's required for Bootstrap. So in a second, we'll do that. But for now, create a link tag. And then here we're going to do href, set that equal to style.css. And all this is doing is linking our style sheet to our HTML page so that we can write CSS in here and it will know to use that. Create some body tags, and all of the HTML and JavaScript is going to go in between these two tags. Excuse me. Here we go. At the bottom here, I'm going to create script tags just to get that out of the way, and all of our JavaScript is going to go inside of here. So at the top here, I'm just going to create an h1 tag, and h1 is header, so it goes h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, h6, and as the number gets bigger, the header gets smaller. So h1 is going to be a big header, and that's what we want for this. So we're going to say actually let's just say to do list. All right. So if I save, right now all we should do, when I refresh this, all we should see is to-do list. And we do. Alright. So beneath this, we're going to create a div. And a div is basically just the way I'm going to reference it is it's going to just basically be a section of HTML that is divided from other HTML. So it's sort of a division. And in here, I'm going to put an ID, and it's going to be called the to-do list parent. And all of the to-do list items are going to go inside of this. Okay? So to reference something using an ID in CSS, we use a hashtag. To reference a class, we use a dot. So since the ID is to-do list parent, it's an ID, we're going to use a hashtag. And then all of the styles that we're going to use are going to go between these two brackets. Okay? So now that we're at this point, I'm going to go ahead and grab Bootstrap and jQuery. So first I'm going to just do jQuery CDN. And CDN it's a server, and basically it's going to contain the jQuery code that we're going to use to reference. So I'm just going to go ahead and just going to grab the minified version of it. And then at the top of the head, we'll just put it there. Then I'm going to do the same thing with Bootstrap. And I'm going to get rid of these comments. Okay, so let's see if I can put these links in the chat for Twitch, and I'm gonna, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna put it in the description. I don't know if it's gonna accept these. Yeah, it looks like it did. Okay. So now, if I save this and refresh, you should see the font style change slightly. Cool, it did. So that's how you know we have Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is just a library for CSS that makes a lot of things really, really easy. And I'm just using it for this tutorial because it's easy to make things look semi-decent with that. So moving on. So let's see, we have 2 people watching. Okay. So pexels.com, oh my gosh, is a website where you can get free stock photos. And in here I'm just going to type in beach, and I'm going to use this image right here. I'm going to open image in new tab and grab this this link here. And then at the very top of this CSS file, I'm going to type in body, and then in between brackets, I'm going to type in background, background image, URL, and then you want to put this inside of quotes, and then at the end put .png, just like that. Okay, so that's going to set this as the background image for our web page here. So when I refresh, I need to properly link this, by the way. Make sure that this link is valid. Yep. And make sure I'm linking this properly. Whoops. Copy that. Okay. So far we have just a header, a to-do list header. We have in HTML, we have the parent here, and all of the to-do items are going to go inside of this parent. We have the script tags set up. We have a background image, and we have the CSS ready to start editing the parent. Now, we're going to go ahead and do a couple of, I'm going to talk about how we're going to do this. So, normally, you're going to want a database, because we're going to be storing to-do items. So, we could store these in a variable, but then as soon as we click refresh or we leave and come back, it's just going to be wiped out. It's going to be gone because when we exit the web page, all of the data that's stored in that web page in memory is gone. So typically we would use a database. Well, in this case, we don't want to set up an entire database just simply for this tiny app. So what we're going to use is local storage, and it's something that's built into the browser that lets you set up a key value pair system. So what I mean by that is you can set a key, and in this case it's going to be to-do items, and then a value, which is, in our case, is going to be a JSON object. And JSON is JavaScript object notation. JSON, just like that. And you can look at this website if you'd like to learn more about JSON. That's the basic object notation that JavaScript uses. However, you can't store pure JSON in a local storage item, so you have to stringify it. And that is built into JavaScript, and it looks like this. JSON.stringify, and then whatever JSON object. It turns that into a string, and then we're going to use that to store the item. So, first thing we're going to do is assume that we have it. So var to-do list is equal to window.local storage dot get item, and we're going to be calling this to-do list, just like that, in all caps with an underscore. It does not have to be like that. We can use whatever key we'd like. I'm just using this because it's a decent convention. It separates, so normally a JavaScript variable would look something like this, but I'm purposely writing it like this so that it's easy to differentiate. So now we're grabbing the to-do list, but at first, when we first load the page, it's not going to exist because we haven't saved any to-do items. This is the very first time we've ever loaded this page, so we're not going to have this in the local storage. So we're going to create an if else statement here, and we're going to say if to-do list, and that's basically saying if to-do list exists, do whatever is between these brackets, else otherwise do whatever is between these brackets. So if it does exist, I'm going to create another variable right here that we're going to use specifically for displaying. And we're going to leave that empty so we can set it later. I normally wouldn't do this, but for a tutorial I would like to do this, okay? Let's see. Okay, so moving on. If the to-do list exists, we're going to set display to-do list equal to to-do list. And for now we're going to have a test or a example to-do list that comes up if it's the first time you've ever been to this website. And this is what our JSON object is going to look like. So example to-do list. Each item is going to have a task and a Boolean section called completed, and this is either going to be true or false. By default it's going to be false because it can't be completed the second you create it. And so task, we're just going to say do laundry or something. And I'm going to create a few of these. Do laundry, do dishes. These are really generic, but it'll do. Get groceries. Make tutorial. Okay, so what's going to happen is when we first load, I should probably, in the else statement, so if the to-do list does exist, so if we have something stored in local storage, we're going to set the display to-do list, which the display to-do list is what we're going to use to actually display the to-do list. We're going to set that equal to what we found in local storage. Otherwise, we're just going to use this example to-do list. So we're going to say display to-do list is equal to example to-do list. Okay? So at this point, we're either going to have, no matter what, by this point, we're going to have a to-do list. So since that's the case, we're going to go ahead and start populating this div here. So let's actually grab it and say var to-do list parent. So we're going to grab that actual object and store it as a JavaScript variable here. I'm going to say equals document.get element by ID. And here we know that the ID is to-do list parent, so I'm just going to copy that and put it in there. And so that is going to be loaded into JavaScript. So now I can reference that here. So what we're going to want to do is for each and every single one of these example I should say to-do list items, we're going to want to display the task, this part, as text. So the first step is going to be to loop through it. So this is a for loop. Let I equals 0. I is less than. We're going to use display to-do list dot length I plus plus. So we're going to be looping through each and every single item in the display to-do list. And then we're going to be creating a new div that's going to go inside of this parent for each and every single one of these. So we're going to say var temp div is equal to document.create element, and then inside these parentheses we're going to say which type of element, which is going to be a div. We're going to create a div for each one of these. Then we're going to take this temp div and we're going to add a class. Okay, so it's .class name. We're going to want to give it a task item class. So each of these divs that we create from each of these to-do items, we're going to give the class task item. And so since we already know we're doing that, we might as well go into here into the CSS file and prepare this. Okay. Then we're going to put the, we want the actual text to be this task section. So we're going to say temp div dot inner HTML, oops, is equal to, then we're going to reference the item we're on, so display to-do list I dot task. So what this is basically saying is the div that we created, we're going to set that inner HTML equal to whichever one of these we're on, we're going to set it equal to that task. It's that simple. Now we created the div, but we haven't yet put it into the DOM, which is the document object model. And really quickly, if you don't know what that is, you can type in document object model on Google. I would check out the Wikipedia page for a start, but basically the concept is going to be that if it's not in the DOM, you're not going to see it here on the screen. Okay? So we created it in virtual space, we'll call it, but we have not yet inserted it into the DOM, so we need to do that. And where into the DOM do we want to set it? We want to put this in the to-do list parent. We want to put it as a child of this. So luckily earlier we created a reference to that here. So we're going to copy this. We're going to say to-do list parent dot, I think it's append child, yep, append child temp div. Okay, and let's see if we're in luck here. We have a ton of undefineds, so let's see what we're doing here. And this is actually important, so I should have mentioned this earlier. When you, especially if a lot of you are new, when you're programming, let's move this down a little bit. When you're programming, you're going to run into a lot of moments where you have to log things. In JavaScript, I always have a console window below my main window with the console tab selected so that I can log things and figure out what exactly is going wrong. So in this particular case, I'm trying to loop through, I'm doing a for loop, and I'm looping through the display to-do list up. And I'm getting an enormous amount of undefineds. So what I want to do is log something and try to figure out why that's happening. In this particular case, after this block, I want to log the display to-do list and see if that ends up being undefined. Okay, so what's happening here is let me move I'm going to move this right here. Okay, so that, let me just, before I say that, make sure that that's true. Yep, so what's happening is this is a string. The display to-do list on my end is a string because I had already been working on this project before I started. And since, like I said earlier, we're going to be storing these objects as strings, we have to decode this as if it were an object. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to say json.parse. And what this does is it goes through that string and creates a JSON object. This is all built into the JavaScript language. And so since I did that, now we have what we expected. So again, what this does is JSON.parse takes a string version of a JSON object, which is a JavaScript object notation object, and then parses through it and creates an actual object. The opposite of that would be JSON.stringify, which takes an actual JSON object and then turns it into a string. And then that is what we're going to store in local storage. So anyway, moving on. So now we are looping through. We officially are displaying this as a list, but it's kind of ugly. So now we're going to take a quick moment to go through here and sort of make this a little bit easier to look at. So background color. For now, I'm just going to do white. Black text. Set the height to probably 30 pixels. Set the width to 100% of the parent. So we need to set the width of the parent equal to, let's just say 500 pixels for now. See what that looks like. That's a little better. Let's give each item a border of 1 pixel solid black. Oops. And then let's also give a margin bottom so that we can give a little bit of separation between each item. Margin bottom of, I don't know, 5 pixels. Does that sound good? Okay, that's looking a little better. Let's center the text. So text align, center. Let's make the text a little bigger. So font size, 20 pixels. That looks okay. I can't really see the header, so let's create a header style. Let's make the color white. Okay, that looks a lot better. So now we can see everything, but now what's the next step we want to do? We want to be able to add new items, right? So let's create a button. Let's put it inside of the to-do list parent. Let's create 2 buttons actually. And I'll explain why we want 2 in just a second. So the first button is add, we'll say add item. The second button is going to be clear. And the clear button is going to be, there's 2 purposes for it. One, while developing, since we're going to be using local storage, we're going to want to, just in case, be able to clear local storage for testing purposes. And then we may also want to keep that in case that the person that is creating to-do items, maybe they create 50 to-do items and then they just feel like, you know what, 20 of these to-do items were just random thoughts. And I just want to clear the whole list. So that would be convenient instead of having to force them to go down and clear each one individually. So let's just probably have both of these. Let's give them IDs. So we'll say add item button. Clear item button. Sound good? Sounds good to me. And at the very top of the script tag, we're going to put some click functionality. So right now, if you click, if I refresh this, if you click these buttons, they're doing absolutely nothing. Okay. So we want them to do something. In order to make them do something, we have to give them a click event. So let's first reference it. We're going to say document.get element by ID. And we know that the ID of the add item button is literally add item button. So now we have a reference to it. Then we're going to say onClick. And we're going to set that equal to a function. Okay? I'm going to move this. I don't need to move it. I can actually just do that. So again, we're grabbing a reference to that button. Then we're saying the onClick. So when you click it, we're setting that equal to a function. And then inside of these brackets, we're going to write what it is we want to happen when the button gets clicked. Okay? So when you click add item, I want to create a prompt on the window that says, what is it you want to do? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say var new item is equal to prompt. And then inside of this prompt function, you write in the text you want it to say. which in our case is, what do you want to do? And then we're going to save that. And so for now, all that's going to happen is when I click this add item button, we're going to get the prompt. You're going to say whatever it is, but nothing's going to happen with it. So we have to do something with that new item variable that we just created. And if you don't believe that that's being stored, you can actually, again, log it. So now when I click add item and I say this is a test, when I click OK, it logs it here, just as we expected. So what it is we really want to do is when we create a new item, we want to then add what it is the user types into that. We want to add that into the, let's go up, see what we got, or down I should say, the display to-do list variable. So display to-do list dot push, since it is an array, dot push new item. Actually, we want the new item to be an object, right? We want to say let new object equal this, and then the new item, as we're calling it, is actually just going to be the task part of it. So if we look at each individual item, it has a task section and a completed section. We have to make sure we fulfill both of those. In this case, task is new item, and completed, oops, is false because we just created it. You can't do something and then instantly complete it. That would be awesome. New object. Okay. So now where we're at this point is when we click this and we type in whatever and we click OK, it then pushes that, it creates a new object and then pushes that to our list. But we also have to write it to local storage, or else when we refresh again, then it's just gone otherwise. So we want to go ahead and write it now. So we're going to say window.localStorage.set item to-do list is what we're calling it. So the first parameter is the key, which we are calling to-do list, as you can see here. The second parameter is the value, and that is display to-do list. And so we actually don't want to store this as an object, if you remember. We want to store it as a string. So we're going to say json.stringify display to-do list. Okay. So now when we click add item and it pops up and we type whatever, it's going to add a new task. However, it's not going to work yet because of a few problems. But before I move on to explaining the few problems, I want to make this clear button work because we're going to need that for debugging purposes. So let's go ahead and make that work really quick. That's going to be extremely easy, so don't worry. Get element by ID. We're calling that button the clear item button. So put that there. Dot on click. We're going to set it equal to a function. And then inside of here, we're going to say window.localStorage.remove item. And the parameter for this is the name of the key. So to-do list. So when we click clear, it's going to delete everything that we have stored under to-do list. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Click clear. Then we have the default again, just as we expected, which was created here, by the way. Let me remove this last comma. So let's add an item. So what do you want to do? Let's just say go to sleep. That sounds great, right? Now, I don't have code yet that updates this, so let's just go ahead and manually refresh. There it is. So, add item. This is a test. Click OK, refresh, there it is. Alright, so now, obviously, the next step we want to do is to have it automatically refresh. So when we click add item and we type whatever and we click OK, we want that to just pop up there. We don't want to have to manually click refresh. So Any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to continue then. Okay, so in order to refresh, what we have to do is then go back. Let's see where. Do a quick cleanup really quick before we continue. In fact, at this point, let's do a little bit of styling. Let's get this moved over to the center, and let's make these buttons look just a little bit better. So to make the buttons look a little bit better, since we're using Bootstrap, we're going to add the BTN class and the BTN primary. And those are Bootstrap classes that allow us to just make the button look a lot better by default. Okay, so as you can see, they just look a lot better. Then I'm going to add 2 break tags here to give a little bit of space between the buttons and the to-do list. Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to make this to-do list bold. So that's going to be called font weight in CSS, and we're going to put bolder. Now it's a little bolder. Then what I want to do, let's make sure that this is inside of the parent really quick. What we want to do is move all of this to where it's centered. So this is actually kind of an interesting technique. So in order to do that, we're going to use something called calc. So let's margin left. So the margin left is the space between the left side of this item, which is the parent. So it's an imaginary box that completely surrounds all of this. It's going to be the distance between the left side of that and the left side of this window. So what we want to do is move this over to where it's in the center. And in order to move it into the center, we have to calculate the width. So we're going to use calc. And we know that 50%, so if we say 50%, is going to move this left edge all the way to the very center of the screen. The problem with that is that that's the left side of it. We want the center of all of this to be at the center of the screen. So saying margin left 50% puts it all the way to where it's going to be over here, basically. We don't want that. So we're going to say 50% minus half of the width of this, which is, we know the width right here, which is 500 pixels. Half of that is 250 pixels. And when we save that and refresh, it's all in the center like we expect. Okay. And then this is probably a good time to introduce Palatine. And one of my favorite Chrome extensions, which is called, actually I don't know what this is called. Let's find out. Actually, you know what? I will, at the end, I'll put a link to this in the Twitch chat and in the YouTube description. But basically it allows you to select colors from the screen. So going here, and it says you can't pick from this page. So I have to go back to the original image because that particular, it says, here you can read it yourself, whoops, can't pick from this page. Chrome doesn't allow its extensions to play with your local pages. And since we're working on a local file on our file system, it will not let you do that. So going back to Beach, we can just find that picture again, pick color, and then just copy it. And then another tool, hex to RGB, allows you to convert hex codes to RGB codes. Of course, you want to get rid of the hash. It does not want to work. Oh, I miscopied. Okay, perfect. So take the hex code, if you have that extension, and paste it into Paladin. You can use any color you want. And Paladin creates a color palette for you. And in our case, I'm just going to be using this blue here. I'm going to set the header equal to that. Looks okay. And then the background color, I'm going to use this converted RGB. And this will allow me to teach you something that is somewhat helpful. And that is when you, where is the background color? You can actually use RGBA. A is alpha. And so you can paste in the RGB colors here. And then the last value is the alpha. So you can choose a transparency from 0 to 1. 0.1 is extremely transparent. And then 0.9 is barely transparent. In this case, we wanted to put 0.5. And it kind of gives you this sort of, I guess we probably want to pick a little bit of a lighter color. Let's pick the same color we picked for the header. And then convert that. Yeah, let's use this instead. But we'll use the same transparency. There we go, that's a lot better. Then let's set the color to white. Looks okay. And then let's take this border, make it green to match the leaves. I would not say this is an amazing design, but it's certainly better than what we started with. Let's take this and we will make it a little bit fancier here. So if you take any class name in CSS or ID, you paste it and you put a colon and put hover. Oops, not hoover, hover. Anything you put in between these brackets will apply whenever you're hovering over it. So there is something called a transition, and then you want to put 0.3 seconds. You can put whatever you want. You can make it 1 second all the way to 100 seconds, but or more probably, but in our case we're going to say 0.3 seconds, and what that means is the transition between this state and the hover state is going to take 0.3 seconds. And then we can put a transition here too, and it'll take 0.3 seconds to transition back to its original state. And all that we want to do is take the background color and make it slightly less transparent. And let's also set the cursor to be a pointer. So it looks like that. That's a bit better. Okay. So now technically we have a working to-do list. We're going to do one more step in just a second, but first let's demonstrate what we have so far. So add item, we're going to say go to sleep, click OK, refresh, it's there. Click clear, and then when we refresh we have the default ones again, which actually we can set these defaults to be just an empty array as well. And what would happen is when we refresh it would just be empty, but I'm just going to have it like this. So the final step, as I said earlier, is when we click add item and we type in anything. When I click OK, I want that to refresh immediately. So sorry, I'm just looking for this. This to-do list variable is what we're doing when we very first load this. Basically, the first things we do are set the onClick functions, and then right after that we go into local storage and we grab the to-do list. Well, when we update the to-do list, and even when we save it to local storage, this variable isn't getting updated. We want to go ahead and update that. So let's update that here in the add item button. After we save it, we want to say to-do list is then again equal to this. And the reason why we're doing that is because since we're saving this to local storage, we can then go back into local storage and grab the most recent version. And then this for loop that we're doing here, in fact, let's copy this entire section that's basically saying if the to-do list exists, loop through it, and build our array of to-do items over here. Let's copy all of that, paste it below here. Save. And then, but see, if my suspicion is correct, if I save this and refresh, if I do this, what's going to end up happening is it's going to completely double this list. Let's make sure, let's see if I'm right here. Yep, I was right. So let's clear that. So the reason that's happening is because we're not getting rid of the items that are in the list already, which we need to do. So as I said earlier, this append child thing right here is pushing the elements that we created here into the DOM. And so we're going through and looping through again and then pushing them into the DOM, but we're never removing the old list from the DOM, which we want to do. So actually, what would be the best way to do that? Let's Google it. So right offhand here we have a remove child element. So let's use that. Oops. I wonder if we can, even easier than all of this, just say let to-do list equal document.get elements by class name task item. Make sure that that's what we're calling it. Yep, task item. Then loop through let element of, wow, I cannot spell. Let element of to-do list. Or just for the sake of not confusing people, let's use the old-fashioned way. What is this? Document.remove item. Nope, that's... And then let's log the to-do list at this point. So getting rid of the items is kind of a pain, apparently. Okay, so it looks like you can reference the parent, which in this case we have a reference to already. To-do list parent.remove child. And then it takes a reference to the child element, which in his case he's got. Okay, so we could probably use this. Let's give it a shot. Not quite. So what we're going to do for now, since I didn't prepare for that, what we're going to do window, I think it's window.reload or is location. So this is kind of a cheat way to do it. Yep, so that works. And I can get rid of this stuff. And so what we're doing here is, and if I click clear, I want to do the same thing, by the way. So let me go ahead and paste that before I explain what we're doing. Okay, so when I click clear, no, I gotta refresh first. Okay, clear, cool. So what we're doing here is when we add a new item, so go to sleep, when I click OK, it's refreshing the page and adding it there. So when I click clear, it's doing the same thing. So that is what we're going to do instead of the sort of fancier way of doing it. Okay, so we have a working to-do list. So let's start adding stuff. Now, the very last step is going to be, you want to be able to click one of these and then have it, I guess we're going to just, we want it to stay there because you probably want to see the tasks that you have completed by scrolling down and seeing which ones are completed, but instead of completely deleting it from the list, right? I think that makes sense to me. Let's do that. So since we're going to go that route, we're going to create a new class inside of the CSS called task complete. And then we're going to basically just black it out. So background color, let's set that to black. And let's set the color equal to gray. And then we're just going to add that class whenever we click on one of these. So here's a technique we'll use. In the beginning here, we're going to grab the entire, let's go down here. We're going to grab the entire list of task items. So var task items is equal to document dot get elements by class name. Class name is task items. Okay, so task items is that. Then we're gonna loop through task items. We're gonna loop through task items, and for each task item we're gonna set an onClick function. So we're gonna say task items i.onClick, and we're gonna set it equal to a function. And then so what we're gonna want to do is for whenever we click on one of these, we're gonna want to set that class task completed. So we're gonna say task items i.class list.add task complete. That's what we're calling it, right? Task complete. Okay. Okay, let's go to the elements. And it's task item, not task items, right? Yep. Pretty sure. Yeah, it's task item, not task items, that's what it is. Okay, so now we have class task item. We want to get all of those, let's log it. Refreshing, HTML collection, whoa. Yeah. And here, each time I click on one, I just want to say clicking on one, just to make sure we're actually, so we're still not getting what we're expecting here. And the reason why is because this needs to be at the very bottom. Okay, so we're setting those class names here, and I was setting these onClick functions above that. There we go. So let's restart this. So what was happening was I was setting the task item class before I was trying to delete the class names. I was setting the onClick functions before I had actually set the class names, which was obviously not going to work. So now we can add new items. We can clear the items. And we can mark items off the list. Now if I refresh though, they're not going to save the fact, we're not going to save the fact that they're done. So let's do the very, 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 very final step, which is setting this to true. So see who all is with us. Vanilla.js. Backwoods, dirty. Yes, Vanilla.js. I am importing jQuery though, but it's just because Bootstrap requires jQuery. We're not writing any jQuery code. Okay. And the reason why, by the way, the reason why I'm choosing vanilla JavaScript over jQuery or any other framework is because this is a beginner tutorial. So I'm just cleaning this up really quick. Okay. So start it from scratch. All right, so the very, very final step, is to set this variable completed to true and then save that. So right now we're just, if we click on it, what we're doing is manually changing the class to task complete. But what we should do is two things. One, at that point we should set the completed to true for that particular item, and then we should also, when we're loading the items initially, check to see if completed is true or false. If it is true, we want to go ahead and set that class initially. If it's false, we want to just ignore it and just not add that class at all. So let's start by checking when we first load. A good spot to do that is right here, because this is where we're going through and creating the divs. So this will be a fantastic spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to say in here, if temp div dot completed is equal to true, we're going to want to say temp div class, temp div class name, actually class list in this case. Let's put this at the very top. Okay. Class list dot add task complete. So if the temp div dot completed is equal to true, which by default they're all false, and when you first create one it's false, it's only true if you click on it, it will then add that class. So we're going to save that. Now we have to actually set this to true when you click on it. So on the click here, we're looping through task items, but see, here's the deal. We're looping through the task items, which are the elements inside of the DOM. We're not looping through the actual to-do list array, the JSON object. We have to loop through the actual JSON object as well in order to find the correct one and set the parameter. So here's what we'll do. When you click on one of the items, we will grab the inner HTML, we'll call it item clicked text, but without the capital L there. Item clicked text. We're going to set that equal to task items I dot inner HTML, and then we're going to lowercase it. Okay, so it's grabbing, so if I click on get groceries, this is literally going to be get groceries in all lowercase letters. That's what we're doing here. Then we're going to loop through the display to-do list. Oops. We're going to loop through that. We're already using that, so let's just use J, because it's the next letter in the alphabet. So J. J is less than display to-do list dot length, and then J plus plus. And so we're going to say if display to-do list dot task is equal to the item click text. So if the task, this thing, is equal to item click text, of course this has to be dot to lowercase as well, right? So if the lowercase version of this is equal to the lowercase version of this, then set the completed equal to true. Or actually, better yet, let's set it equal to the opposite of what it is. So what I mean by that is, so I'm going to set it equal to that. So what do I mean by that? So if it's false, already, we're going to set it to the opposite of false, which is true. If it's true, so if I click this, if it's true, we're going to set it to the opposite of true, which is false. So that way we can toggle it back and forth, which just overall is way more convenient. Okay. Then we're going to write this to local storage. And then now we're going to see if it actually works. Okay, so get groceries. Let's refresh. Okay, not quite there yet. As soon as we fix this typo, wherever it is, it'll be done. Call it a day. So as usual, when something is happening and you're not expecting it to happen that way, you just simply log. So we'll start by just logging this. So this one, get groceries. See, that is incorrect. Hold on, refresh. Let's start this over. Let's click make tutorial. If display to-do list j.task.to lowercase is oh my gosh. Wastelander 8899. How long have you been learning? 3, maybe 4 years. The whole time I've been doing mostly Python. I did a lot of C#. JavaScript is my newest language, but it's what I've been doing most of the last probably year or so. But anyway, so what I'm trying to do now is figure out why these, basically something crazy is happening. And I gotta figure out why. So looping through, and it probably has to do, okay, 0, j is less than display, for let I equals 0, I is less than task items dot length, I plus plus. So we're looping through the task items here, which is the elements in the DOM that have the class task item. Then we're setting the onClick functions, and then when we click on one of them, we're adding the task complete class. And so we don't really want to do that because we're going to reload at the end. And that gets handled up here. So we don't want to do that. Let item clicked equals, or the text equal to the task items I, so the element, the inner HTML. So let's log that. Hold on. So that's correct. So it was correct at that time. Interesting. If I click get groceries, it's true that time. Make tutorial. So, but now it's not correct. Or maybe it is. Let's completely clear it and start from scratch. Click get groceries. Get groceries is true. Do laundry. Do laundry is true. Get groceries is true. That's correct. Do dishes. True, true, true. And then make tutorial. Now they're all true. Correct. So then when I click get groceries, that one should be false. Correct. So let's go ahead and reload the page at this point. Do dishes. And by the way, so when we go up here and we where is that happening? It's happening here. I want to, gosh, log temptive. So let's refresh. No, not temptive. We want to log that. Cool. So do dishes completed is true, and this is saying if completed is true, temptive.classlist.ask.add task complete, and yet it is not there. So let's go one step further and say, oops, adding class. This again must be a mistake of yep, it's a derp on my end. Oh gosh. We should be checking the to-do list, not the temptive. Cool. So when I refresh, those stay. So the clear button, let's add an item. Let's say test item. Click OK. Let's say I went and I grabbed some groceries, so I want to mark it off my to-do list. And while I was out, I also did test item. I refresh, those are still done. Let's just say I completely go somewhere else. Let's go to Reddit. And then let's go back. They're still done. All right, that is the, let's see. Haven't actually looked, let's see. Sorry guys, I haven't been reading these chat messages. Can't scroll up. That is terrible. All right, I use React and Vue for all my JavaScript work. I use Angular all day, every day. I started at Angular 2 and now all the way up to Angular 5. Vanilla JavaScript, there's really no reason to use it nowadays, but it is what you want to learn on, because when you do go and you start learning things like Angular JS, you'll at least know what you're doing. React, a lot of people really like React. Vue is, actually speaking of Redux, people are moving away from Redux. So if you're using React and Redux and you actually have the choice to move away from Redux, I would. There is an alternative to Redux, and I can't remember what it's called. But everybody, MobX, that's what it is. Everybody's ditching Redux for MobX. So I would definitely just take a look at it and see if it's for you, because seriously, like, everybody is just ditching Redux and moving towards MobX. Vue, yeah, no, Mob, not ModX. React seems to be the biggest framework right now. I think it is the biggest framework right now. I know a lot of Angular developers, and I know a couple of React developers, but speaking broadly, I've seen more React developers. Vue.js is one of those things that I thought was going to become really big because it was the underdog. And then out of nowhere, it started to spike up, and then it just kind of disappeared. I haven't heard much about it in the last year. Vue has more GitHub stars than React because a lot of people really like Vue. Apparently it's just more enjoyable to develop in, but I don't know how easily it scales. React is where the job market is, yes. By the way, I'm going to commit this to GitHub. You guys can do whatever you want with it. I'll do that right now. Okay, so let me type in, that is the GitHub username. If you didn't come from Reddit, then you can just go to github.com/ZACKAZT. Actually, I don't think I changed. Yeah. Wait. It's right here. So, yeah, this was like my first tutorial, so it didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped, but hopefully somebody learned something. And I'm going to put this on YouTube. So it's YouTube. Actually, I can't. YouTube's going crazy nowadays. You have to have like 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 view hours to be part of the partner program now. So I can't have my own URL at the moment. Hold on. Let me just go to my website and then you can go here. Yeah, so if you go to portexe.com, you can go to YouTube, click that. I'm going to put this on YouTube so you can see it afterwards. Thank you, JXC. And I'm going to do more of these tutorials, and I'm going to get better at this stuff. So I was thinking the next tutorial I'm going to do is a scientific calculator, but it's not going to be a live tutorial. Thank you, Wastelander8899. Yeah, so I'm going to do the way that I'm going to do the scientific calculator tutorial is I think I'm going to start with a live tutorial on Twitch on just creating a standard calculator. And then it's going to be, after that, it's going to be probably a series of 2 to 3 videos that are pre-made and uploaded directly to YouTube for getting some of the more complicated aspects of it working, because that stuff I'm not probably going to be able to do off the top of my head. So, but I can make a JavaScript calculator easily. In fact, I kind of have one working now. It's just something I made in a live stream the other day. It took about 30 minutes or something. So I'll probably start with this and then go to the full TI. But I'm going to go ahead and terminate the live stream. I thank everyone who watched, and I hope somebody got something out of it.